If you learn anything from this review, and it's my sincere hope that you don't, is to sign up for Slick Deals email alerts so the next time a knife like the Spyderco Puukko in G10 goes on sale for $55, you can get in on the deal too. You know, instead of watching a lame YouTube reviewer rub a great deal in your face and then wonder, is it really worth the $200 when you can get a Mora for $8 and the 7 minutes it takes to watch this video, or however long it ends up being. Plus, this jerk will probably call it a Puukko and reinforce the stereotype that Americans are culturally insensitive to the point that this guy's probably going to baton with a knife. True dat. So let's go over the dimensions, like the overall length and weight, with and without the sheath, the blade length, and cutting edge, dat handle size and dat grip area. I mean, I guess if you could call a grip area any part of this handle. And then the handle thickness and the spine thickness. So a Puukko, or a Puukko, is a small traditional fixed blade that has a straight back and a single cutting edge, something you probably also learned from Wikipedia. Mora makes some cheap variations on this style, but a lot of nice Puukkos can get expensive. This is not an exception. Like, for instance, the $400 retail of the Spyderco Puukko, which comes in G10 or a wood handle and is now discontinued, which is, I guess, why the special happened. I think you can get it for as little as $149 on Knife Center right now. The blade on the Spyderco Puukko features a Scandinavian grind, or Scandi grind for those people who say Pani instead of Panasonic or Subi instead of Subaru. The Scandinavian ground S30V steel has a satin finish. A Scandinavian grind is identifiable easily because of the lack of a noticeable secondary bevel, like on a lot of knives. Here, this would be the secondary bevel. The Spyderco Puukko, the blade tapers all the way down to a fine edge, and you don't have that secondary bevel. Although, honestly, it looks like there's a tiny micro bevel down there, if you look closely. You'll see it's similar on the Mora, which is the most popular type of knife that features a Scandinavian grind, because they're like $8. A Scandinavian grind is similar to a saber grind, but a saber grind usually has a noticeable secondary bevel. It's razor sharp out the box, so you can break down all those diaper boxes with your knife designed by a Scandinavian, made by an American company in a Taiwanese factory, because that's the world we live in. Recognize any of this footage? The handle comes in either a G10 version or Arizona ironwood. Mine is the G10 version. The G10 is slightly grippy and has a slightly unusual teardrop handle shape if you look at it from the back. See? Which in my hand causes a peak at the bottom to hit in a slightly weird place of my closed fist. I'll be honest, if you're looking for a nice ergonomic handle you can use for hours, the Mora Companion has a much more comfortable grippy one that has a nice ergonomic place for your hand to grip. A lot of Puukkos have a more rounded handle at the bottom, and I would have preferred that for comfort. Maybe the Arizona Ironwood has a more rounded handle. The Spyderco Puukko in G10 has no hilt or guard or jimping or nothing much to keep your hand from slipping while doing something like heavy duty cutting, other than of course the texture of the G10. I would call this a good light prep knife or something for lighter or medium duty work. I wouldn't call it a great knife to beat on your wood for hours on end. Mostly because the handle might not be too comfortable for that. The knife should be able to stand up to abuse though. The knife is definitely heavier than expected and a little handle heavy, although the tang is concealed, and I would assume it runs the entire length of the knife, although I have no idea if it's the entire height of the handle. Now, compared to a Mora Companion, the blade and cutting edge are actually smaller, and the knife is almost 2 ounces heavier, as evidenced by this fancy graphic. The sheath. The sheath is what you would knife experts refer to as the dangly type. So if you sit or stand while you're not playing with your knife, it should pivot a bit more nicely than one without a brass ring. So when you sit down, it kind of lays where you're sitting, and when you stand up, it dangles back down. The sheath is extremely high quality and made of a nice thick leather. The knife relies on a tight fit of the sheath opening to stay put as it doesn't have a snap enclosure. Although considering the sort of straight handle this knife has, an extra snap probably wouldn't have done much good. But it's still a pretty high quality sheath. Okay, let's do a little carving on the Christmas tree while I go over some additional stuff about this knife. So Spyderco bills this as a simple, functional design. I agree it's simple, although I would prefer a handle to have a slightly more rounded bottom so it feels better in your hand, if you know what I mean. The sheath is a nice design and the brass ring helps it to move out of the way, but honestly it feels a little more like a collector's knife. But at $55 it was a steal. There seems to be a few things that feel a little more like stylistic choices than ergonomic practical ones. There's a whole world of higher-end Puukkos out there from brands I can't properly pronounce, and if I tried, it would cause an icy rift between America and the 3 people from Finland who might happen to watch this video and speak English better than I can, which is, I think, most Finnish people. I feel like the main reason I'm drawn to this knife is because it looks nice and I know it's expensive. And if something is good looking and expensive, people tend to overlook a lot of other things. Also, if you know what I mean. I'd say if you can find a good deal on this, jump on it. Otherwise, if you're looking for a nice Puukko, look for the real deal. Now, that said, I don't really own a lot of Puukkos. I own 2 Moras, but looking at pictures online, which is how most people do these channels, it looks like there's quite a few great options out there. I think a Hele? I told you I shouldn't do that. Now, while this started out looking like a butt plug, you can hopefully see now it's starting to look like a crude Christmas butt plug. Okay, just a Christmas tree. And you're like, looks more like a pointy snowman. Well, if you haven't seen my SEMA video that I did recently, it may not make a lot of sense as to what I'm doing here. And some of you are probably like, yeah, it looks pretty obvious you're carving, bro. Anyway, as for blade length, the blade is a bit too small for any real batoning, although that's not going to stop me. And as you can see, over the course of a few days, the edge has gotten beat up a little bit, but it's still pretty sharp and enough to cut vegetables. Now, I've read some thoughts online that sometimes knives with Scandinavian grinds aren't as good as other knives for food prep because it gets thick fast behind the edge, so you're not going to get good intricate slicing or intricate food prep. Well, I find it doesn't do too bad on these mini tomatoes. Now, I'm not really a pro chef, but for camp food, it does about as well as any of my other pocket knives. Provided they're sharp. And if you liked this review, subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and watch all of my other reviews of knives and flashlights. Thanks for watching.